everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is an orientation to the Vital Signs program that's led by Community Foundations of Canada. Just a couple of reminders if this is the first time you're on one of our webinars. We have everyone muted so you can hear us, but we can't hear you, and this just helps to avoid any outside noises and feedback. After this recording or this webinar, it will be recorded, and the slides and the recording will be available to you in our Vital Signs Google group and on our CFC website. Or else if you want to get in touch with me directly, I can email you the link. And so for the best webinar experience today, we ask that you close all other applications and turn up your computer's volume. So for you to get the most out of our webinar, because we do have everyone muted, there is a question box or chat log that's on your webinar program here. It's usually located in the top right-hand corner. And so if you have questions, please enter it into that question log and submit it. This is a way that we can hopefully get to all the questions that are posed during the webinar and for you to get the most out of this webinar experience. And so please use that. If appropriate, we'll stop partway through the webinar and answer some of those questions. Otherwise, I do have a lot of material to cover today, and we might just wait and do it all at the end. So please feel free to access that question box. So just as a means of introduction, my name is Cindy Lindsay, and I'm the Director of Member Services for Community Foundations of Canada. Part of my role is also, I've been heavily involved with the Vital Signs program for 6-7 years now, and stepping in and filling in for Claude Lausière, who did lead the community aspect of Vital Signs, so that's the liaison with community foundations, but has moved on to a new position with the Public Policy Forum, and so I'm stepping in her role right now until we fill that role. And so I also lead the global aspect of our Vital Signs work. And also part of our Vital Signs team, but not joining us today because he's off-site at the CKX Summit in Montreal, is Lee Rose, who looks after the national aspect of our Vital Signs program, so the Sense of Belonging reports and some of our Pulse reports that you may have come across. So, so let's really start to dig in now. As I said, we've got a lot to cover. My apologies if I start to talk too fast, but I want to make sure we get through everything today. So this is our agenda for the next hour. Just an overview of the Vital Signs Initiative, the aspect around assessing the need for vital signs in your community, also community buy-in, what does that look like, and then an outline of project management and things that you need to think about. So let's just jump in right now for the first around the Vital Signs Initiative. And I just want to give you a quick overview about what we feel makes Vital Signs unique. And so for many communities, this is the first time anything has been put together like this that provides a broad range of data, sort of giving a 360-degree view of all the various aspects of our community. We like to say this is about publishing research that you can read on, that you can easily read, easily access. We like to say it's data you can read on the bus. So it's not a high-level academic tome. It's user-friendly, it's graphic, very visual, lots of photos and charts and so on that make it a really easy-to-use document. Vital Signs is part of this national initiative, as I mentioned at the beginning, coordinated by CFC, but engages a wide number. We have over 60 community foundations now involved in various aspects of Vital Signs across the country, in addition to our global partners, which is about another 25 to 30. It's all too about how we can have that opportunity to mobilize the data into action, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. It's also a process which engages the community, which a lot of research might not necessarily do, and it becomes a very strategic exercise for community foundations. So in other words, how do we bring that information into our work as community foundations? So really it's about mobilizing knowledge into action. So today, Vital Signs has become much more than a national data collection program or a series of reports, which in the early days, it was very much around that. It becomes the basis now of a foundation's strategic direction that guides and helps them determine everything from their local priorities for action to their grant making and donor engagement strategies. The reports are used by local government, social planning councils, businesses, and countless community organizations. So Vital Signs doesn't talk about the power of community philanthropy. It really helps to illustrate it and inform it. It focuses on building an asset that is truly about more than money, and it's about community knowledge. And that's one of the key assets that we have with our Vital Signs program. But building this knowledge is actually really only the beginning of the process. So when Vital Signs first became a national program, the participating foundations really focused on the details of collecting data and creating reports. So the how and the what and the when. But those initial forays, as I mentioned, quickly expanded into a much larger conversation about mobilizing that knowledge and to what end. So why is knowledge important to our communities? Why is it important to us as community foundations? What role does it play? How can it enrich our lives and our vision of the future? So when we think about Vital Signs, we think about the platform as community knowledge, and Vital Signs is a key tool to elevate that community knowledge and the actions that are outlined above here. Over the past couple of years, we've been looking at our Vital Signs model and how we really wanted to make some adjustments so that it was much more adaptable by more community foundations. We had a Vital Signs task force a few years back that really looked at how could we provide a wider range of Vital Signs entry points for community foundations and make it more accessible no matter what your size of foundation and your capacity. We also wanted to alleviate data pressure points for participating community foundations, so where there's limitations around access to data, and this is still an ongoing process. And we also want a vehicle that we can really help you and help us promote community knowledge and Vital Signs as an operating system for our community philanthropy, so that, as I mentioned, Vital Signs and that knowledge becomes core to who we are and what we do. So just to outline, if you're not familiar with how we have restructured things and rolled it out last year, is there's 4 components that we'd like to think about in our Vital Signs community program. And I'll just really outline these quite briefly, and I'm happy to share more information with you following today's webinar. So let's just talk a little bit about Vital Conversation. So these are facilitated conversations that a community foundation might lead with focused questions. The toolkit says currently in development. It is now ready, and it's like Vital Conversations in a box. So here's some questions, here's some strategies, some ways that you can use this. These Vital Conversations can be done throughout the year. We see community foundations such as West Vancouver and Whistler using them as a lead up to the report, so getting feedback from the community, high level engagement. It was a great strategy for them. Some community foundations are using it as a follow-up to their report. So having these conversations about what the report is telling us and how we can engage the community and stakeholders in that. Or it could be just a standalone separate event on a specific topic. And so there's lots of ways you can do this, and it's also really an exciting way for those community foundations that are in really small communities that have limited access to data, so their local population might be part of a larger aggregated area. So for example, Bowen Island on the west coast of BC held Vital Conversations in lieu of doing a report, because all their data was part of the Greater Vancouver data, and it made no sense for them to use that data. And it helped that community foundation identify some priorities for them to work on. And it really helps keep the report alive in your community in between reports as well. Vital Brief is really just a snapshot of your community. So think about this as a mini Vital Signs report. It features 1 to 2 or 3 issue or theme areas and the corresponding data points. Again, it could be done throughout the year. It could be an update tool between reports, or it could be a lead up to a report. And again, really helps to keep interest and energy alive in your community in between the larger reports. Vital Focus is a single issue report strategy, so it can be tied to the national theme such as belonging, or we saw some do it around food security, or tied to an emerging issue in your community. It can showcase both local and national data, and we would work with you on this. It can also provide a more comprehensive analysis of an issue that's shaping your community. And so, for example, London went through a very in-depth vital signs, vital focus on mental health in their community. And you can launch this on a National Vital Signs Day if you wish, or a Vital Signs Week, or choose to do it at another time. And then, of course, the full report, which is what we just call Vital Signs. And that's our flagship report, the ones that you see on the website that you might have looked at or picked up at various meetings. It really helps to leverage local knowledge to measure the vitality of our communities. It's, helps support action towards improving our collective quality of life. And as I mentioned before, it could be the result of a lead up from vital conversations or a vital brief. And so there's lots of ways, again, that you can use your vital signs report to leverage other opportunities in your community. So those are the 4 components. Last year we introduced for the first time a 24-month vital signs subscription model, and part of this is to keep communities, foundations engaged in vital signs, not just as producing a one-off report, but how do we integrate this as a long-term strategic exercise for our work as community foundations. And so part of that is various strategies to help you be engaged in vital signs on an ongoing process, and how do you engage with your community partners and those kinds of things. We're continue to roll out more options for implementation and tools to help keep vital signs alive in your community all year round. So for example, there was the one that we did on the Pulse report we did on sport and belonging. And so community foundations were able to access a template where they could duplicate that information with some local data as a special feature. We'll be releasing one this spring on belonging in the arts and what that means for us as communities. And of course, always the big question is, well, what does vital signs cost? So again, with this 24-month approach, we want to keep you in this work and in this process on an ongoing basis. And so we have 3 different price points depending on the size of foundation you are and how we categorize them around groups. So the group ones tend to be the smaller foundations. So it's a fee of $1,500, and you can see where how that breaks out, where it can be you can pay it once upfront cost, or you can split it over the 2 years or on a quarterly basis. For group 2, so those are our mid-sized foundations, it's a $4,000 fee over the 2 years, and for the group 3 foundations, so our largest ones, it's a $12,000 fee over the 2 years. If you have any questions about what size of what group you fall in as a community foundation, please get in touch with me after today's webinar, and I'd be happy to walk you through this. And for those that are new to Vital Signs for the very first time, the first 24 months is on us. So for the Group 1 and Group 2 foundations. So yes, you read this right. There's no subscription cost to participate if this is your first time doing Vital Signs. And what that fee helps support is around, giving you access and us support in implementing vital signs and the tools and resources that we have there. So information, as I said, the toolkit around vital conversations. We have templates that you can use to produce these various reports and guidance around that. We have a number of resource guides that will be available to you when you sign up for Vital Signs. One on collaboration, engagement, research, impact, and special reports. And these guides are full of best practices, templates, examples from your colleagues across the country. Today's webinar is just one of several that we hold over the coming months around ways that you can do and engage around vital signs. So we encourage you to participate in those, and then also using Lee and myself as touch points if you have questions or just need to work through some things. We do have our Vital Signs website, so you have a spot there to load your reports and any other information you may be producing. A collaboration site, so this is our Google group where it's our communication tool. So instead of getting a whole pile of emails, we use this as a listserv and as our communication channel out to you and amongst each other. As I mentioned, report templates are available, so for those foundations that don't want to incur the cost of maybe going to a design of a full report, we can provide you with a template and a guide to go along with that that would be very, very inexpensive for you to produce. Some promotion tools, of course, engagement around our national report and communications, access to the centralized data, and of course I think what's most important here is our brand around vital signs and the related collateral. Just to mention the collaboration space, this is for all vital signs participants, staff, volunteers, researchers, or whatever, and so if you would like to be part of that listserv, please get in touch with me again and I can add you to that. We use Dropbox to upload all our data on that is pulled together on the indicators, and we also use this space to share resources, stories, work plans. You know, you can ask questions and you know, just use it as the best way possible to communicate to your colleagues. So the purpose for today, I really want to focus just on the report aspect of vital signs, so the full report, because that's sort of the key piece, and I know the piece that many of you are interested in. Upcoming webinars will spend more time talking about how you can do the conversations or a vital focus or whatever, but today I really just want to focus on the report. And so this is just, I think, a great snapshot of the variety of reports that have been produced across the country. So the vital sign report goals really, you know, this really helps set the context as to why we do vital signs, why it's important to be engaged in this way. And based on all of this, at the heart of our vital signs work, as I mentioned, is the production of the report. So in all instances, our goals are to measure the well-being of a community each year across a range of factors that contribute to the quality of life, and to identify significant trends and emerging issues affecting a community. So that's the data piece. And that's a very important part of our vital signs work. But it's also about making important information easily accessible and to engage the community in prioritizing issues and assessing progress in those areas. So one step for that could be the community engagement piece, followed by, you know, encouraging community members to find out more and to take action to improve their community and to influence local priority setting and action. And last but not least, to inform the Community Foundation's ongoing work, including its grant making, supporting donors' philanthropic decision making, and enhancing its ties to the community. And that's the strategic component of vital signs. So really encouraging you to think about it in that way, so that once the report's done, it just doesn't sit on the shelf, and that it really becomes a living, driving document for the Community Foundation. The Vital Signs report is focused around a number of themes here. So you can see again when I refer to sort of that 360-degree view of the community, these are sort of the core areas that we work within. And within each of those themes are a set of indicators that are supported by data. And so this is data that we have on a wide range of indicators. We're cleaning up the data list again this year, so looking to probably have up to 80 indicators across those issue or theme areas. Really starting to drill down at the CMA, CA, regional and district area. Doing a refresh on some of our indicators as well, where possible, and looking at trying to pull together up to 30 plus common indicators that disaggregate. So that is really an important part of what we've been hearing over and over, especially for smaller communities where some data just does not disaggregate down to their size. We're trying to find some baseline common indicators that will reach out to those communities. And for each of those indicators we provide a context statement which helps interpret the data, and the source link. So what's the actual source of that data, which comes out in August. And there is a question about the timing of the census release, and I will talk about that in just a couple of minutes. This is a little fuzzy, but I know I just wanted to give you an overview of those theme areas and the indicators that continue to come out and that we're looking at in our part of the review process as well. And then here's an example, a couple of examples of context statements. So when I said, that provides an overview and a bit of analysis. So for example, the one for Victoria is the overall incidence of poverty for all persons based on LICO. So it talks about what that data point is and how it might compare to either provincial or national level where we have that data. So what are some of the data challenges and opportunities that we face around vital signs? And one, of course, is around the census, and I will talk a little bit more about that. We've gone through lots of changes with our census, the cancellation of the long form, the institution of the long form, and this long-awaited, we really want to get access to this information. Sometimes the data is also delayed coming out of StatsCan, as we experienced last year, that we have absolutely no control over. But there are opportunities for community foundations to build relationships to source local data, and this is relationships with your local municipality, with school boards, health units, and so on, and other institutions, which is a great way to take data that exists in that community, is very local, and put it out in a great context, and is really relevant to your community. So in comparison to maybe reporting on a larger catchment area. Population size, again, is a bit of a challenge. As I mentioned, we're really trying to disaggregate as much data as possible this year. But it's also really important that you determine your catchment area as soon as possible. And I'll mention that when we talk about the deadlines. But it's really hard for our researchers to start looking at data if you're reporting on the city of, but then you decide that you also want to do a broader region, but don't decide until June that you want to include that data. So you really need to think about what is your catchment area for your report. So here's just, as you know, we're eagerly awaiting the census information, and here is what is currently on StatsCan's website in terms of the rollout of the data. So as you can see, a lot of the data that we would like to use around families and households, income, immigration, Aboriginal population, education, all those are coming out quite a bit later than what we want for vital signs if we are to look at an October release date. So we've had lots of conversations at CFC and with some of you out there, and bottom line is we want your vital signs report to be the best that it can be. And if that means that you want to wait and not release it in October because you want to wait for some of this data, that's perfectly fine for us. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about this as we roll out vital signs, but we really, some of the conversations we've had with foundations is that they're still going to participate in the October event, and what they might do is hold a conversation about what they're already learning and sort of build some momentum, and then launch the full vital signs report either later towards the end of the year or early in 2018, because we know how important it is to have the most recent information available as possible. So if you're still counting on 2010 data and you know the new census data is coming out, you might want to think about what's our strategy for this. And I'm happy to have those conversations one-on-one with any of you if you want to think this through. So let's just talk momentarily about the vital signs around assessing the need for vital signs. And as I mentioned, there's lots of data that we use. There's also other data sources out there that we look at. The Canadian Index of Wellbeing includes a lot of the national data indicators that we have, quality of life reporting system, community social data strategy. We look at all those as well and incorporate them as much as possible, and building on that. one of the things that's important to do is look at your own community and what exists already in your community. So if you're doing vital signs for the first time, the questions we might ask about vital signs in our community is, what already exists? Is anybody else working on local indicator reports? Is there room for another one? Is there a unique role for vital signs that you can play? Can it add value to the work that's already happening? Or could we build on something that's already happening and maybe co-host vital signs in conjunction with something else? So lots of ways for you to think about it. We really just encourage you to take a scan of your community to figure out what's already happening out there. And then let's move on to community buy-in. So the benefits of working with your community and having these kind of conversations is to really better understand what already exists. But also by engaging your community, and these could be through your vital conversations, really helping you to identify indicator needs and gaps as well, provides you an opportunity to listen about what people want to hear about their community, might open some new doors to data as well, and really help to build and open and strengthen those relationships where you can access data, but also bringing new people into the Community Foundation fold and that may not have heard of you before or know of this kind of work, and help to build those relationships. And again, as I mentioned, about internalizing those learnings within your own foundation. So, there's a couple of aspects here, and a number of ways you can build community buy-in. So first is around general engagement. And in our community engagement resource guide, we outline this in more detail, but it's around informing stakeholders. So who do you in your community want them to know that you're engaging in this work? So informing those stakeholders that you're undertaking vital signs and why you're doing it. And would they possibly like to be a part of it? Letting other organizations that may be impacted on this work. Announcing to the broader community that you're participating in vital signs. Again, just to generate some interest and helping to open the door to opportunities. And this could take the place of key informant interviews, public forums. You could have themes, sort of areas of interest, forums, web-based surveys, through media, and meetings with community leaders. So lots of ways you can do this. Again, I would encourage you to, if this is something that you really want to think about, strategies around these conversations, the Vital Conversation Toolkit has a lot of information there, and in particular how West Vancouver and Whistler approach their strategies, which they did a great job on. And then the second way you could do this is around specific engagement. So bringing together an advisory committee or a leadership committee, whatever you want to call it, to provide you with advice and guidance as you work through the vital signs process. And again, those are bringing people who are the experts in the community. We're not an expert on many of these issues and themes around vital signs, but we can rely on these people to challenge us, support us, and be advocates for our vital signs work. And they're a great group to have alongside your organization. You could create vital signs working groups if you wanted that would help collect and supply the local data, participate in other forums, and looking at ways you could co-grant with other funders based on the vital signs findings, or partner on some specific projects that might come out of your vital signs work. And then I just want to touch on project management a little bit because of course this is the how-to. And again, we'll be going into more detail on this on the webinars that are to follow, but just to give you some thinking around what does undertaking vital signs include. So as I just mentioned, that community consultation and engagement piece. It's around collecting data, if you need to seek new data or local data, and interpreting data. So understanding what data means, how to write it, interpret it in a way that's easy to read. It's around deciding what indicators to use, because one of the beauties of vital signs is there's lots of information out there. We just can't use it all. And so how do you decide what to include in your report? It includes planning the publication of the report. What's it going to look like? Who are you going to distribute it to? Is it going to be web-based? Is it going to be paper and web-based? Are you going to have inserts in the paper? All sorts of ways to think about our vital signs report. How you're going to promote it, what's your communication strategy around that? Are we going to do some surveying? What's our strategy around that? And of course, bringing it back in-house, integrating it into the work of the foundation and evaluating your work around this. So just to talk about project management a little bit, there are some specific skills, as I mentioned, especially around research and data gathering. You know, you might want to look at someone who has that skill set. I would really encourage you to do that, has that ability to provide that data analysis, and is also a strong writer and can communicate well and express the work of vital signs really well. If you're an executive director and thinking of taking this work on yourself, I would really encourage you to think otherwise, just because of the time commitment it takes to do, and it really does detract you from your everyday ongoing work. You can certainly oversee it, but I think it's great to have someone else as part of your team that can manage the project and do that data work for you. The work plan will look at, you know, you have to think about what's our planning phase, our communications and engagement phase, our report, what's our launch going to look like, in our evaluation piece. So those are sort of the key components of that, which I'm just going to show you in a little more of an outline here. So looking at, you know, in this coming month, you know, we'll be distributing the vital signs agreements, having those signed and returned to us, identifying your key stakeholders for volunteers or staff to lead this work, and looking at you know, just how you're going to start to work on this and building out your strategy here. We'll be confirming the data list in March, which again I will talk about those dates in more detail in a moment. Our resources, looking at your communications and media strategy. And then when you move into April, May, and even before then, you might start to want to do your community engagement, looking at, you know, having those conversations about what indicators should we do, with an eye to finalizing your indicator selection by the end of May and starting the data collection. And then our data starts to roll out actually towards the end of May to July, and again I will show you those dates, and working on whatever local research and data is available as well. And then August, September, you move into the writing, updating your website, media outreach, and local launch preparation. Last year, for the first time, we introduced Vital Signs Week rather than Vital Signs Day, because Vital Signs Day also landed on Rosh Hashanah, and so it was a conflict for some communities, and felt that they wanted to do another day. So we went with the Vital Signs Week, which actually went over very well and allowed community foundations to maybe launch the report one day and then catch their breath and do a community piece a couple of days later. And so, you know, do a soft launch and then a bigger speaking presentation opportunity a couple of days later, so that it keeps the momentum going out throughout the week. So you have that opportunity, if you are gearing to launch a report in October, to do it any time during that week. For those that would like to maybe postpone it, as I mentioned earlier in this webinar, there are ways that you can engage around that Vital Signs Week, which we would really encourage you to do, and we can talk about strategies around that as well. There is a question around, was there any thought to making the national release in early 2018? And our thinking is that we are still going to hold to the October date. As part of our commitment around 2017, we do want a report to come out in October, but and Lee will follow up with more details in the coming month around what that report's going to look like. So here's, I'd like to just cover sort of two aspects around the cost of doing vital signs. And so let's focus first on the human resource side of things. So, you know, the work around internal communications that you need to think about, the time to meet with stakeholders, do that community engagement piece, all those things take time, liaising with us, possibly talking to other community foundations, you know, doing that scan of your community to find out what's already existing. You know, all those components that I just did a really quick overview, those are the key pieces of undertaking vital signs. And it is a big piece of work, but it's also a really incredible piece of work for any community foundation. The other side then, of course, is the financial side. So the cost of hiring possibly a project manager. Some community foundations have been really successful in finding a volunteer in their community that has that type of background, that can do the research, the data collection and analysis and so on. You know, if you need additional data from local government or whatever, then, you know, you've got to take some time to do that. The publications, so again, if you're going to look at doing a full written report, you know, the cost of pulling that together, photos, design work, or even if you wanted to make it web-based without the cost of printing. A number of community foundations are going that way and producing a smaller, lighter touch version, or an executive summary almost, and directing people to their website. And again, just a reminder that we do provide a template which would really help save for the cost of the design of the report. And of course, you know, providing this feature on your website, updating your website to include a vital signs link and component of that, and then the cost if there's any to doing the community consultation and your launch event. So at a minimum, we tend to estimate that a vital signs budget would cost between around $25,000 on average. And so you can see here where the key costs out of that 25, it says 23 here, but that's because we haven't included a vital signs fee in there, but are the research contracts, so hiring the project manager and the printing. So those are sort of your key components, you know, the design, that kind of thing. So if you can find ways to support that or get it in kind, it's a great way to do that. And so this would be for a small to mid-sized community foundation, what a budget would look like based on doing a full report. Vital conversations or doing a focus or a brief report, you know, you could make slight adjustments to that as well. And then community foundations have a lot of creative ways to help fund their vital signs work. One, of course, is to reach out to their existing donors to find out if there's interest, especially if it's a donor advised fund, if they would like to make a grant to the community foundation to do vital signs. Some foundations have been really successful on that. Using some of your discretionary funds to make a grant to support vital signs. Sponsorship, so there's a couple community foundations I know have been very successful in having a theme area sponsored. So for example, the local community college providing $5,000 to have their logo on the education page or the learning page, a section of their vital signs report. And so you have to make sure that you know, there's a nice a relationship there and the same values before you start selling sponsorships to everybody. You know, various collaborations and partnerships. We are seeing more and more community foundations working in support with United Way and other organizations to help sort of co-produce vital signs. It is still a Community Foundations of Canada initiative, but many other organizations would like to be a partner in it and can provide some funds to make that work as well. Other funding sources, some grants, you know, and that might just depend on what's available in your area or region. This is just a quick snapshot, as I mentioned, around the template and how it looks. And so it comes with a guide that explains you how to do it. It's you drop in your own photos. It's very easy to do, and I really encourage you to take a look at it. As I mentioned, I just wanted to recap around the cost of doing vital signs, just so that you're clear, and if you have any other questions around that. So as I mentioned, we do provide a series of webinars. These webinars touch on the various components of our work around vital signs. February 15th will be our next one, which talks about community engagement and collaboration. So, and we'll have a community foundation that has gone through this process recently to share their experiences, what they learned coming out of this. And again, this is based on, the content will be based on our resource guide and sharing some best practices. March 1st, we'll talk about the research and data and how that work is going. And then the communications webinar is on March 22nd. And these will be announced on the CFC website in the events section, and there'll be a link there that you can register for them. It also gets promoted through our e-news, and if for some reason you're not receiving our e-news, please, please, please get in touch. So I've been referencing that we have some key dates here, and so I'll share those with you right now. We will be making the agreement to participate, which needs to be signed and returned back to us that you are in for vital signs for this year. That will be ready early next month, and we need to have that back to us by the end of March, so March 31st. By March 1st, we will have the final list of common indicators so that you know what we are being able to provide, and that list will include how far we can disaggregate that data down. These are the projected delivery dates for data with our research partner. So the first round of data will be available May 15th, followed by June 15th, and then July 17th. Those indicators that I showed, or that census rollout information, as it comes out later this year, we will be uploading that as well. So if you want to continue to access the most recent information, it will be there for you as soon as we get access to it. The context statements, which I showed you, which are those brief analysis of the data, and the source information comes out about 10 days to 2 weeks after we deliver the data to you. In August, we encourage community foundations to work with our research partner because they are happy to take a look at your report before in the draft form and just do a double check on data, or if things are written out of context or whatever, before you send it to print. And then, as I mentioned, October 1st to 6th is our Vital Signs Week. And so this is a really quick overview, folks, but I just wanted to share with you what's happening so far this year. We're really excited about vital signs. Yes, there is some struggle around data, but we continue to create lots of energy and see community foundations engaging their vital signs work in so many different ways. And so even with that existing data that will be coming out in May, June, and July, you could do a teaser in October with a more fulsome report at the beginning of next year. There's lots of ways that you could do that, and we'll be really excited to talk to people about how they would like to roll out their vital signs work. As I said, we're not holding people to specific dates. We want this to work in the best interest of your organization and your community. So that was very fast on my part. Happy to answer any other questions that you might have. So please, we've got a couple minutes that we can do field some questions, and if you have anything else you'd like to ask. I will mention that right here is my email address and my phone number, so if you do want to touch base with me after today's webinar, please do so. I'm happy to chat and talk about your thoughts around vital signs, what you're thinking about how to deliver it, and some concerns you might have or challenges, and we can work through some various scenarios. So happy to do that. I'll just take a minute to see if there's any other questions that have come through. I will share the question about any thoughts to making the national release in early 2018. I will share that with Lee, and so we could maybe think about that a little bit more too, or if what the follow-up to the fall report could be as well. Oh, here's another question. When will this webinar be posted? Well, hopefully by early tomorrow morning, hopefully first thing tomorrow morning, we'll get that up as soon as possible. So it's located in the, it'll be sent out the link on the Google Groups for Vital Signs, but if you don't have access to that yet, it will also be posted on our website in the events section where we list all our webinars and other events. So I don't think there's any other questions. We can wrap this up and happy to, as I said, field any other questions that you may have. And hopefully this has got you thinking about how you would love to do vital signs for your community and get things underway, and hopefully you'll join us for the upcoming webinars as well. So thanks very much folks for your day, and look forward to your engagement around vital signs. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.